The Oklahoma sun beat down mercilessly on the abandoned water tower that stood like a rusted sentinel at the edge of Millbrook County. For most folks driving past on Route 47, it was just another piece of forgotten Americana, a relic from when the town actually meant something. But for James Hartley, that water tower was salvation. James had returned from his second tour overseas 6 months ago. Afghanistan had changed him in ways that made small-town life feel like wearing shoes 2 sizes too small. The nightmares came most nights. The sounds of market crowds made his hands shake. And the gratitude everyone kept offering felt like sandpaper on raw skin. He was 32 but felt ancient. His marriage had crumbled 3 months after his return. Sarah had tried, God knows she tried, but she could not compete with the ghosts that followed him home. His father's hardware store, the one he was supposed to inherit, had closed down while he was deployed. Now he worked at Murphy's gas station, pumping fuel and watching the pity in people's eyes when they recognized him. The water tower had become his refuge. Every morning at 5, before his shift started, James climbed the rusty ladder with his grandfather's old rifle. Not to hurt anyone. Not even to shoot. Just to look through the scope, to feel the familiar weight in his hands, to remember when his skills had mattered. From up there, he could see the whole town. The Methodist church where he used to sing in the choir. The high school football field where he had been quarterback. The VA office where he went every Thursday for appointments that never seemed to help. And beyond it all, the rolling Oklahoma plains that stretched toward a horizon that promised nothing. This particular morning, James noticed something different. A black SUV had parked outside Rosie's Diner, where the town council held their monthly breakfast meetings. 3 men in suits stepped out, and even from 200 yards away, James could tell they were not locals. Their shoes were too shiny. Their movements too confident. He adjusted his scope out of habit, the muscle memory taking over. Through the crosshairs, he could see Mayor Bradley through the diner window, shaking hands with the suited men. The mayor was smiling too wide, the way he did when he wanted something. James was so focused he did not hear the police car pull up below until the megaphone crackled to life. Sheriff Morrison's voice boomed across the morning quiet. "James, we know you are up there. We need you to come down. Now." His heart hammered. Had someone reported him? Did they think he was dangerous? By the time he descended, a small crowd had gathered. Sheriff Morrison stood with his arms crossed, his face a mixture of concern and exasperation. Beside him was Dale Tucker, who owned the feed store and served on the town council. Dale spoke first, his voice dripping with that particular brand of pity that made James want to disappear. "Son, we have talked about this. You cannot keep climbing up there. People are getting nervous. Mrs. Henderson called it in this morning, said she saw you with a rifle." James kept his eyes on the ground. "It is not loaded, Sheriff. I am just looking." "Looking at what?" Dale pressed. "There is nothing up there but rust and bird droppings. You need help, James. Real help. Not whatever this is." The small crowd murmured in agreement. James recognized most of them. Mr. Patterson from the bank. The Kowalski twins who had been 2 grades below him. Jenny Martinez, who used to babysit him when he was 7. Sheriff Morrison sighed heavily. "Look, I understand you are going through something. We all respect your service. But this has to stop. The tower is county property, and it is not safe. Next time, I will have to write you up." Dale stepped closer, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret, though everyone could still hear. "Between you and me, those investors in town are looking at this area for development. Having a vet with PTSD camping out on a water tower with a gun is not exactly the image we want to project. You understand, right?" The words hit James like a slap. PTSD. Camping out. The image we want to project. He wanted to explain that the water tower was the only place where the world made sense, where his training and his instincts still had value, where he could see threats before they materialized. Instead, he nodded slowly and handed his unloaded rifle to the sheriff. As the crowd dispersed, James heard the whispers. Poor guy. Shell-shocked. Such a waste. Remember when he had that full-ride scholarship? He walked toward Murphy's gas station, his shift starting in 20 minutes. The black SUV was still parked at Rosie's diner. Through the window, he could see the mayor and the suited men shaking hands, sealing whatever deal would probably change Millbrook forever. James had no idea that in 72 hours, those same people would be calling him a hero. He had no idea that his so-called disturbing behavior would save 12 lives. He had no idea that the water tower everyone mocked would become the most important vantage point in Oklahoma history. All he knew was that for now, he was just the broken vet who could not let go of the war. The humiliation festered like an infected wound. By noon, the entire town knew about James and the water tower incident. At Murphy's gas station, customers who used to thank him for his service now avoided eye contact. Mrs. Chin, who always asked about his mother, paid at the pump without coming inside. Around 2 in the afternoon, a silver pickup truck pulled up to pump 3. Travis Brennan stepped out, all swagger and malice. Travis had been the backup quarterback in high school, the one who got to play after James enlisted. He had stayed in Millbrook, married the homecoming queen, and now sold insurance with his father-in-law's firm. Well, well. If it is not our local sniper, Travis announced loudly enough for the other customers to hear. Heard you got kicked off your perch this morning, Hartley. What were you doing up there? Reliving your glory days? James kept his eyes on the register. Pump 3. $42. Travis leaned against the counter, his cologne overwhelming in the small space. You know what your problem is? You think you are special because you went overseas. Newsflash, buddy. Nobody cares anymore. The war is over. Time to grow up and get a real job. This is a real job, James said quietly. Travis laughed, sharp and cruel. Yeah? Is that what you tell yourself? My cousin came back from Iraq, and you know what he did? Went to college on the GI Bill. Bought a house. Got promoted. He did not spend his mornings playing soldier on a rusty tower like some kind of psycho. The other customers were watching now. James could feel their stares, their judgment, their discomfort. Maybe your head got messed up over there, Travis continued, emboldened by his audience. Maybe you saw some things. But that does not give you the right to scare people. My wife told me she does not feel safe knowing you are up there with a rifle. What if you snap one day? It was not loaded, James said, his voice barely above a whisper. This time, Travis. What about next time? You need to be locked up, Hartley. You are a danger to yourself and everyone else. The words echoed the same sentiment Dale Tucker had expressed that morning. The same doubt he saw in Sheriff Morrison's eyes. The same fear he felt radiating from his neighbors. James said nothing as Travis paid and drove away, still laughing. When his shift ended at 6, James walked home through the back streets, avoiding Main Street where people might see him. His apartment above the old barber shop felt smaller than ever, the walls closing in like a cell. He sat by the window, looking out at the water tower in the distance. In the fading light, he could see something that made his blood run cold. Movement around Rosie's diner. The black SUV was still there, but now there were 2 more vehicles. And the men gathering outside were not wearing suits anymore. They were wearing tactical gear. James grabbed his grandfather's binoculars, his training kicking in automatically. 5 men. Maybe 6. Automatic weapons. Moving with military precision toward the diner's back entrance. His phone was in his hand before he realized it, dialing 911. The 911 operator's voice was maddeningly calm. Sir, what is your emergency? There are armed men at Rosie's diner. Military weapons. Tactical gear. They are entering through the back. James spoke rapidly, his eyes never leaving the scene unfolding below. Sir, can you tell me your name? James Hartley. Listen to me. This is real. I can see them from my window. 5, maybe 6 hostiles. They are not police. They are not military. Something is wrong. There was a pause. Mr. Hartley, we received a call about you this morning. Are you taking your medication? The question hit him like a physical blow. What? No. This has nothing to do with that. There are armed men at the diner right now. Sir, I am going to send someone to check on you. Please stay where you are. The line went dead. James stared at his phone in disbelief. They thought he was having an episode. They thought he was the problem. Through the binoculars, he watched the men disappear inside the diner. 30 seconds later, screams erupted from inside. People ran toward the windows, then were pulled back violently. The front door slammed shut. Someone hung a closed sign in the window. His hands were shaking, but his mind was clear. Clearer than it had been in months. This was what he had been trained for. This was why his instincts had kept him alive through 2 tours. This was why the water tower mattered. James grabbed his grandfather's rifle, the box of ammunition he kept locked in the closet, and ran. The streets were quiet. Most people were home having dinner. He reached the water tower in 4 minutes, his lungs burning. The rusty ladder felt familiar under his hands as he climbed, muscle memory taking over. From the top, he had a perfect line of sight to the diner. 180 yards. Clear field of fire. No civilians in the way. Through the scope, he could see into the diner windows. 12 hostages on the floor. The mayor. Dale Tucker. Jenny Martinez. The Kowalski twins. All the people who had whispered about him that morning. The armed men were pacing, weapons raised. One of them was on a phone, shouting demands James could not hear. If you are watching this and thinking James is crazy, thinking he should have waited for help, let me tell you something. Sometimes the right choice looks wrong to everyone else. Sometimes being called a hero means first being called a fool. If this story is hitting different, if you are rooting for the guy everyone doubted, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Because what happens next is going to change everything you think you know about second chances. James steadied his breathing, his finger resting gently beside the trigger guard. Not yet. He needed to understand the situation. Count the hostiles. Identify the leader. Wait for the moment. Through the scope, one of the gunmen moved to the window, checking the street. His face came into sharp focus. James recognized him immediately. It was one of the suited investors from that morning. The recognition changed everything. These were not random criminals. This was planned. Calculated. The investment pitch, the friendly meetings, the handshakes at Rosie's diner. It had all been reconnaissance. James forced himself to breathe slowly, counting each inhale and exhale the way his spotter had taught him in Kandahar. Through the scope, he mapped the diner's interior. 6 hostiles confirmed. 3 near the hostages. 2 by the front door. 1 pacing near the kitchen, barking orders into a phone. That one was the leader. Tall. Angular face. Moving with the confidence of someone who had done this before. Sirens wailed in the distance. Sheriff Morrison's cruiser screeched to a halt 2 blocks away, just outside the perimeter James had instinctively calculated. The sheriff stepped out, megaphone in hand, and the negotiation began. But James could see what Morrison could not. Inside the diner, the leader gestured sharply to his men. 2 of them grabbed hostages and dragged them toward the kitchen. Execution positioning. They were not planning to negotiate. James's phone buzzed. Unknown number. he answered without thinking. Morrison's voice came through, tight with stress. James, I know you are up there. I need you to stand down. We have professionals on the way. Sheriff, they are about to kill someone. Back kitchen. 2 hostages. You have maybe 60 seconds. Damn it, Hartley. Do not do anything stupid. That is an order. It is not an order if I am not on duty, James replied, and hung up. Through the scope, one of the gunmen pressed a pistol against Dale Tucker's head. Dale, who had called him disturbed that morning. Dale, who had 3 grandchildren and coached Little League on weekends. The crosshairs settled on the gunman's center mass. 180 yards. Light wind from the northwest. Elevated position. Every variable James had calculated 1,000 times in training. His finger moved to the trigger. The shot cracked across the evening air like thunder. The gunman dropped instantly, his weapon clattering to the floor. Dale scrambled away, screaming. Chaos erupted inside the diner. The other hostiles scattered, searching for the shooter. The leader shouted commands, his men taking defensive positions. James was already chambering the next round. Through the scope, he tracked the leader moving toward the front window, using a hostage as a shield. Jenny Martinez. Barely 5 feet tall. Terrified. The leader's mistake was assuming James would not take the shot. James had a 2-inch window between Jenny's left shoulder and the leader's right temple. At this distance, with this wind, the margin of error was non-existent. He exhaled slowly, his heartbeat steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. The second shot shattered the diner window and found its mark. The leader collapsed, and Jenny ran toward the other hostages, sobbing. 4 hostiles remained. Sheriff Morrison's voice boomed through the megaphone, demanding surrender. The remaining gunmen, leaderless and exposed, saw their odds crumbling. From his perch on the water tower everyone had mocked, James Hartley kept his scope trained on every movement, ready. The broken vet had become the only thing standing between 12 innocent people and death. The remaining 4 gunmen made their decision quickly. Without their leader, without the element of surprise, they were just targets waiting to be picked off by an invisible sniper they could not locate. One by one, weapons clattered to the diner floor. Hands rose in surrender. Sheriff Morrison's team moved in with practiced efficiency, securing the suspects and evacuating the hostages. Ambulances arrived, their lights painting the street in alternating red and white. News vans followed minutes later, satellite dishes extending toward the darkening sky. James remained on the water tower, his rifle lowered but ready. He watched the hostages emerge, stumbling and crying, wrapped in shock blankets. Dale Tucker collapsed into his wife's arms. Jenny Martinez was carried out on a stretcher, shaking but alive. The mayor stood apart from the others, his expensive suit rumpled, his carefully maintained image shattered. Sheriff Morrison's voice crackled through James's phone again. It is over, son. You can come down now. The descent felt longer than the climb. His legs trembled, adrenaline finally giving way to exhaustion. When his boots hit the ground, Morrison was waiting with a dozen deputies, their expressions unreadable. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Morrison did something James never expected. He extended his hand. You saved 12 lives tonight, the sheriff said quietly. I should have listened to you on that 911 call. I am sorry. The apology hung in the air, witnessed by deputies who had been ready to arrest him that morning. By the time federal agents arrived an hour later, the story had already begun to spread. The tactical team confirmed what James had instinctively known: this was a kidnapping operation targeting Mayor Bradley and several council members. The ransom demand would have been in the millions. Without James's intervention, the FBI tactical coordinator explained grimly, we would be counting bodies instead of arrests. The news crews descended on James like locusts. Microphones thrust toward his face. Questions shouted over each other. Local hero. Miraculous shots. Water tower sniper saves Millbrook. He answered their questions mechanically, his mind still processing what had happened. The cameras loved him. The broken vet narrative transformed overnight into the vigilant guardian story. Same person. Different lens. Travis Brennan appeared on the evening news, claiming he always knew James had potential. Dale Tucker told reporters that James was a pillar of the community who deserved respect. Mrs. Henderson, who had called 911 that morning to report him, now claimed she always felt safer knowing James was watching over the town. The hypocrisy should have made him angry. Instead, James felt only a hollow kind of vindication. That night, sitting in the sheriff's office while federal agents took his statement for the third time, James looked out the window toward the water tower. It stood silhouetted against the Oklahoma sky, no longer a symbol of his brokenness but proof that his instincts, his training, his vigilance had never been the problem. The town had been wrong about him. And 12 people were alive because he had refused to believe their verdict. 3 years later, the water tower still stood at the edge of Millbrook County, but everything else had changed. The rusted structure had been restored and repainted, a bronze plaque mounted at its base, in recognition of James Hartley, whose vigilance and courage saved 12 lives on October 14. A town is only as strong as those who watch over it. James stood before the plaque on a crisp autumn morning, coffee in hand, wearing the uniform of Millbrook County Sheriff's Department. Morrison had retired 6 months after the incident, and in the special election that followed, the town had voted overwhelmingly for the man they once feared. His phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, his ex-wife, now his fiancée again. "Dinner tonight? Mom wants to finalize the seating chart." He smiled and replied yes. Their reconciliation had been slow, built on therapy sessions and honest conversations about trauma and healing. She had been the first to visit him the night of the shooting, tears streaming down her face, apologizing for not understanding what he had been trying to tell her all along. A truck pulled up beside him. Dale Tucker stepped out, moving slower now after his heart surgery last year. The fear he experienced that night had damaged more than his pride. "Morning, Sheriff," Dale said, genuine warmth in his voice. "Still checking on your old perch?" "Old habits," James replied. Dale nodded toward the water tower. "You know, I tell my grandkids about this. About how wrong I was. How the whole town was wrong. They ask me what I learned, and you know what I tell them?" James waited. "That sometimes the people we dismiss are the ones seeing things we refuse to. That broken does not mean useless. That different does not mean dangerous." Dale extended his hand. "Thank you for not giving up on us, even when we gave up on you." After Dale drove away, James climbed the water tower one last time. The view was the same, but his perspective had shifted. He could see the new community center being built with funds from the lawsuit settlement against the kidnapping ring's financiers. The VA office had expanded, now offering programs he helped design. Murphy's gas station, where he once pumped fuel in shame, had hired 3 veterans last month. From up here, Millbrook looked like hope. His radio crackled. "Dispatch. Sheriff, we have a situation at the high school. Possible intruder." James was already descending, his training activated, his purpose clear. "On my way." If you made it this far, thank you for watching this story about second chances and seeing value where others see problems. James's journey reminds us that heroes do not always look the way we expect, and sometimes the people we judge the harshest are the ones who save us. Hit that like button if this story moved you, drop a comment telling me what you learned from James's experience, and subscribe so you never miss these powerful true-to-life stories. What topic should I cover next? Let me know below. Until next time, remember, never underestimate the quiet ones who are paying attention.